Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where we share stories that captivate the imagination and stir the soul. Today's tale is one of courage, survival, and unexpected strength in the face of danger. It all begins with Joe Martinez, a hard-working plumber on what should have been an ordinary day. But when a run-in with a rowdy gang of bikers at a remote gas station takes a dangerous turn, Joe must rely on skills no one would expect from a man with a toolbox. Stay with us as we dive into a gripping story filled with resilience, surprising twists, and moments that will have you holding your breath. If you enjoy stories of everyday heroes rising above impossible odds, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story from Hopeful Horizon. And don't forget to comment and tell us where you're listening from. Joe Martinez's van rattled as it pulled into a dusty, isolated gas station on the outskirts of nowhere. The late afternoon sun baked the cracked pavement, shimmering waves of heat rising from the ground. His van, bearing the faded letters, Martinez Plumbing and Repair on the side, had seen better days, much like its owner. Joe, in worn jeans and a grease-streaked hoodie, stretched his back with a groan as he stepped out, his shoulders sore from a long day of crawling under kitchen sinks and patching busted pipes. He swiped a hand across his sweat-slicked brow and walked toward the pump, fishing a credit card from his pocket. As he set the nozzle into the van's tank, the hiss of flowing gas filled the air, a steady rhythm that momentarily masked the distant rumble of approaching engines. The noise grew louder, a menacing growl cutting through the silence. 6 motorcycles roared onto the lot, their chrome gleaming under the sun. The riders, clad in black leather jackets with patches that read Iron Fangs, circled the lot before parking near the station's entrance. Joe paid them no mind at first. Bikers weren't an unusual sight out here. He focused on filling his tank, mentally reviewing the repairs waiting back at the shop. But then came the laughter, sharp and cruel, aimed directly at him. The leader of the pack, a towering man with a shaved head and a snake tattoo coiled around his neck, sauntered toward Joe. His boots thudded heavily against the pavement. "Hey, Mr. Fix-It," the man sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "You unclogging toilets on your way to nowhere?" Joe exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. He was used to snide remarks, came with the territory of being a plumber. He'd heard it all before on job sites and from snobbish clients who looked down their noses at manual labor. "Just filling my tank," Joe said evenly, refusing to rise to the bait. But the bikers weren't done. The leader's buddies chuckled as they leaned against their motorcycles, watching the scene unfold like a twisted form of entertainment. "Bet that van smells like a sewer," one of them hollered. "You probably do too." Joe clenched his teeth, willing himself to stay calm. He'd learned a long time ago that rising to provocations only made things worse. He kept his eyes on the gas pump, counting down the seconds until he could get back in his van and leave this mess behind. The leader wasn't satisfied with Joe's silence. He wanted a reaction. "You got a name, plumber boy?" the man taunted, stepping closer. "Or should I just call you Shitman?" Joe's grip on the pump tightened, but he forced himself to remain composed. "Just trying to get home, man. No trouble." The leader sneered, leaning in until Joe could smell the stale beer on his breath. "Too late for that, Fix-It." Behind them, one of the bikers deliberately kicked over a trash can, the clattering sound echoing through the station. Crumpled wrappers and empty soda cans spilled across the pavement. Joe took a steadying breath. "Nice mess you made," he said coolly. "Maybe clean it up." The leader's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Why don't you clean it up, plumber boy?" "Ain't that your job?" The bikers laughed, their jeers bouncing off the station walls. Joe glanced at the clerk inside the convenience store, a nervous-looking teenager who quickly averted his gaze, clearly wanting no part of the brewing confrontation. Joe finished pumping gas and returned the nozzle to its holder. He kept his voice level but firm. "Enjoy your day, fellas." He turned toward his van, hoping to leave peacefully, but the leader wasn't done. "Hey!" Snake Tattoo shouted. "We ain't done talking, Mr. Fix-It." The bikers started moving, circling Joe like wolves around prey. Joe sighed inwardly. So much for getting home early. The tension thickened as the bikers closed in, blocking Joe's path to his van. Their motorcycles idled ominously, engines growling like beasts waiting to pounce. Joe kept his posture relaxed, though every muscle in his body was primed for action. Years of competitive martial arts training had taught him the value of staying calm under pressure. Panic made you sloppy. "Move," Joe said evenly, his voice cutting through the rumble of engines. The leader grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "What's the rush?" "Thought you'd like to hang out with us for a bit." One of the bikers, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, grabbed Joe's toolbox from the back of the van. "Hey, look at this fancy kit," he crowed, flipping open the latch. Tools clattered onto the ground, wrenches, pipe cutters, and a coil of plumber's tape scattering across the pavement. Joe's jaw tightened. "Put it back," he warned, his voice low and controlled. "And no one gets hurt." The leader snorted. "Or what? You gonna fix us like a busted pipe?" The bikers laughed, their amusement echoing in the dusty air. Scarface kicked one of the wrenches across the lot. "Oops," he said mockingly. "My bad." Joe took a deliberate step forward, his gaze locked on the leader. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Walk away." The leader's grin faltered for a moment, but pride and bravado kept him from backing down. "You got balls, I'll give you that," he said, "but you're outnumbered, fix it." One of the bikers lunged forward, shoving Joe hard in the chest. Big mistake. Joe moved instinctively, his training kicking in. He deflected the shove with a swift twist of his body, grabbing the biker's wrist and twisting it sharply. The man yelped in pain as Joe forced him to the ground, his arm pinned at an awkward angle. The laughter died abruptly. The leader's face darkened. "Get him!" he barked. Two more bikers rushed at Joe, fists swinging wildly. Joe ducked under the first punch, driving his elbow into the attacker's ribs. The biker gasped, stumbling backward. The second man managed to land a glancing blow to Joe's shoulder, but Joe barely flinched. He retaliated with a precise kick to the knee, sending the man crumpling to the ground. The remaining bikers hesitated, their confidence shaken by Joe's swift and decisive moves. "You really want to keep this up?" Joe asked, his voice deadly calm. The leader's face twisted in rage. He reached for something tucked into his waistband, a knife glinting in the sunlight. Joe's eyes narrowed. "Don't." But Snake Tattoo was beyond reasoning. He lunged at Joe with the blade. Joe moved like lightning, grabbing a long steel pipe from his van's open compartment. He swung it with practiced precision, knocking the knife from the leader's hand. The weapon clattered to the ground. The leader stumbled back, clutching his hand in pain. Joe leveled the pipe at him like a sword. "Walk away," he said coldly, "while you still can." The sound of approaching sirens pierced the tense silence. Red and blue lights flashed in the distance, backup summoned by the terrified gas station clerk. The bikers exchanged panicked glances. Joe stood his ground, the steel pipe gleaming in his hands. The leader's bravado crumbled. "Let's get out of here," he snarled. The bikers scrambled onto their motorcycles, engines roaring to life as they sped off, leaving their wounded comrades behind. Joe exhaled slowly, lowering the pipe. The fight was over. As the police cars screeched to a halt, officers spilling out with weapons drawn, Joe offered a wry smile. "Just doing a little cleanup," he muttered. The officers took in the scene. Tools scattered across the pavement, groaning bikers nursing their injuries, and Joe standing tall amidst the chaos. One officer approached, glancing at the fallen knife. "You okay, Mr. Martinez?" Joe nodded. "Yeah," he said, "just another day on the job." The tension thickened like heavy fog over the desolate gas station lot. The remaining two bikers glanced at their leader, Snake Tattoo, who was cradling his bruised hand and seething with rage. Despite the obvious defeat written across his sneer, he wasn't ready to back down. Neither were his men. "You think you're some kind of hero, Plumber boy?" One of the bikers spat, his voice thick with defiance. "We ain't done yet." Joe Martinez remained calm, his grip firm around the long steel pipe he'd pulled from his van. Years of martial arts training had taught him more than just fighting. It had instilled discipline and an unwavering sense of control. The first biker lunged with reckless abandon, his fist clenched and aimed straight for Joe's face. Time seemed to slow as Joe analyzed the man's movements, spotting the flaws in his technique. Joe ducked beneath the wild swing and delivered a sharp elbow to the biker's ribs. A satisfying crack echoed through the air as the man gasped, doubling over. Without missing a beat, Joe pivoted and swept the biker's legs out from under him, sending him sprawling onto the concrete. The second biker was quicker and craftier, circling Joe like a predator, sizing up its prey. He grinned wickedly before grabbing a wrench from the scattered contents of Joe's toolbox. "Let's see how tough you are without your fancy moves," the biker growled, brandishing the wrench like a club. Joe's eyes narrowed. He shifted his weight subtly, preparing for the inevitable strike. The biker lunged, swinging the wrench in a brutal arc aimed at Joe's head. With precise timing, Joe sidestepped the attack, grabbing the biker's wrist and twisting it sharply. The wrench clattered to the ground as the biker howled in pain. Joe followed up with a swift palm strike to the biker's chest, knocking him backward. The man stumbled but remained on his feet, glaring at Joe with hatred. "You son of a—" Joe didn't wait for him to finish. He stepped forward, his movements fluid and deliberate, and swept the biker's legs out from under him. The man hit the pavement hard, groaning as he struggled to breathe. Breathing steadily, Joe glanced around. 2 bikers lay groaning on the ground, defeated. Snake Tattoo and the others watched in stunned silence. Snake Tattoo's face contorted with fury. "I'll kill you, you piece of garbage," he snarled, reaching into his waistband. Joe's heart rate remained steady as he saw the glint of metal, a concealed knife being drawn. "You really want to do this?" Joe warned, his voice low and deadly calm. He shifted his grip on the steel pipe, wielding it like a staff. The leader hesitated, his bravado faltering for the first time. The knife trembled in his hand as he weighed his options. The man was a bully, and bullies thrived on fear. Joe showed none. "Put it down," Joe said quietly but firmly. "Walk away." Snake Tattoo's jaw clenched, indecision flickering in his eyes. For a moment, it seemed like he might charge forward, knife in hand, but something in Joe's unyielding stance made the man reconsider. "You're lucky," Snake Tattoo spat, his voice laced with venom. "Real lucky." Joe didn't respond. He simply held his ground, the steel pipe glinting in the fading sunlight. Before anyone could move, the distant wail of police sirens pierced the tense silence. The flashing red and blue lights grew brighter as patrol cars sped toward the gas station, tires kicking up dust as they screeched to a halt. The bikers panicked. One of them scrambled to his feet, clutching his injured ribs as he staggered toward his motorcycle. Another tried to drag himself off the pavement, cursing under his breath. Snake Tattoo's bravado dissolved completely. "Cops," he hissed, his eyes darting wildly. "We gotta get out of here." But it was too late. The gas station clerk, a pale-faced teenager with wide eyes, stood near the door of the convenience store, his phone still clutched in his hand. He had clearly called for help the moment things had spiraled out of control. The officers poured out of their vehicles, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see 'em," one officer barked. Joe calmly dropped the steel pipe onto the ground, raising his hands in a show of compliance. He had nothing to hide. The bikers, however, weren't as cooperative. Snake Tattoo made a desperate dash for his motorcycle, but 2 officers tackled him before he could reach it. The others were quickly subdued, their protests drowned out by the clinking of handcuffs being secured around their wrists. "Looks like we caught ourselves some troublemakers," one officer muttered as he patted down Snake Tattoo, retrieving the concealed knife from his waistband. Another officer approached Joe, his sharp gaze taking in the scattered tools, the bruised bikers, and the dented work van. "You all right, Mr. Martinez?" Joe wiped sweat from his brow, offering a faint smirk. "Yeah," he said. "Just doing a little cleanup." The officer arched a brow, clearly amused. "Cleanup, huh?" He glanced at the bikers, now being loaded into patrol cars. "Looks like you handled the situation pretty well." Joe shrugged modestly. "Had some practice." The officer nodded appreciatively. "These guys have been causing problems all over the county. Theft, assault, you name it. Been trying to nail them for weeks." Joe's lips quirked into a smile. "Glad I could help." As the officers wrapped up their work, the gas station clerk stepped forward, his face flushed with gratitude. "Thanks, man," the kid stammered. You saved my job, probably my life. I didn't know what to do." Joe waved off the thanks. "Just glad you're okay, kid." The clerk grinned nervously. "Next time you come by, gas is on me. Least I can do." Joe chuckled. "I'll hold you to that." With the bikers in custody and the situation under control, Joe retrieved his scattered tools, placing them back in his dented toolbox. His van, battered but reliable, waited faithfully at the pump. As he climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, Joe took one last look at the scene. The flashing lights, the subdued bikers, and the relieved faces of the gas station employees. Just another day on the job, he muttered to himself with a wry smile. The van rumbled to life, and Joe pulled onto the highway, leaving the chaos behind. The roads stretched out before him, wide open and full of possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Joe knew he was ready for them. Because sometimes, even a plumber had to clean up more than just pipes. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey of resilience, courage, and justice. Joe's story reminds us that heroes aren't always the ones wearing capes. They can be everyday people who rise to the occasion when it matters most. If this story inspired or moved you, don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts. We love hearing from our community, so let us know where you're listening from. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another impactful story from Hopeful Horizon. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay courageous, and always stand tall in the face of life's challenges.